Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radhamadava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Girivaradari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Jaya Vrajajana Ranjana Chari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radhamadava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radhamadava Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Everybody. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya. Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol. Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol. Janitai Gaur Pramanandi Jaivam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakachaja Sutra Satashi Shimolis Divine Grace Lacey Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jaivam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakachaja Astotra Satashi Shimolis Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai Ananti Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shanda Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Imuna Devi Ganga Devi Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtanya Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Janita Gaura Premanandi Hari Om. O glorious to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna. O glorious to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna. O glorious to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna. O glorious to the Lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Garanga. O glorious to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we're reading from Sri Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, Madhya-lilā, chapter 15. We'll read from text 197 through to 204. 204 has a purple. We'll read and discuss. I want to begin by saying it's a real pleasure to be with all of the devotees, especially devotees of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and so requesting your blessings so we can speak something that will be pleasing to Srila Prabhupada and hopefully inspire on our journey as well. So what I'll do is I will just do the translations from 197 to 203, and we can chant 204 together. Okay. So this chapter is entitled Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya Offers Prasadam. So, just to give some backdrop, the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come to accept his invitation. That is a bit of a there's a bit of a negotiation that takes place. He originally asked him to accept the invitation for lunch for 1 month, and the Lord actually says no, basically. goes on to explain it's not a religious principle for those in the renounced order, sannyas order, but they go back and forth and they reach an agreement. So where we've got to is that the Lord has agreed, let's see, the Lord has agreed to accept 5 things. He's agreed to accept 5 things. And then also, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya just told him in the previous verse, because there are other sannyasis that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is traveling with. So they're listed in previous verses. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says that the other 8 sannyasis will accept invitations 2 days each, and basically that will allow him to fulfill the engagement for the entire month. Okay, so then text number 197. If all the sannyasis came together, this is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya speaking. If all the sannyasis came together, it will not be possible for me to pay them proper respects, therefore I will be an offender. Text number 198. Sometimes you will come alone to my place, and sometimes you're speaking to Lord Chaitanya, sometimes you will come alone to my place, and sometimes you will be accompanied by Sri Damodar. Text number 199. Having this arrangement confirmed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya became very glad and immediately invited the Lord to his house on that very day. Text 200. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's wife was known as Satira Mata, the mother of Sati. She was a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and she was affectionate like a mother. Text number 201. After returning to his home, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave orders to his wife Satira Mata, and she began cooking with great pleasure. Text number 202. At Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's house, there was always a full stock of food. Whatever spinach, vegetables, fruit, and so on were required, he collected and brought back home. Text number 203. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya personally began to help Satira Mata cook. She was very experienced and she knew how to cook nicely. Okay, so we will chant 204 together. Bakashalara Dakshine Dwi Bogalaya Ekagari Shalagrimera Ekagari Shalagramera Boga Sevahaya Bakashalara Dakshine Dwi Bogalaya Ekagari Shalagramera Boga Sevahaya Bakashalara Dakshine Dwi Bogalaya Ekagari Salagramera Boga Sevahaya Salara Dakshine. On the southern side of the kitchen. Dui Boga Alaya. 2 rooms for offering food. Ekagare. In 1 room. Shalagramera. Of Lord Shalagram. Bhoga Seva. Offering of food. Haya. There is. Translation in purple by His Divine Grace. Srila Prabhupada ki. On the southern side of the kitchen were 2 rooms for offering food. And in one of them, the food was offered to Shalakram Narayan. Purple. Among the followers of the Vedic way, the Shalagram Shila, the Vigraha of Narayan, is worshipped in the form of a stone bull. In India, every Brahmana still worships the Shalagram Shila in his home. The Vaishyas and Kshatriyas may also engage in this worship, but it is compulsory in the house of the Brahman. Okay, so please repeat after me. On the southern side of the kitchen were 2 rooms for offering food. And in one of them, the food was offered to Shalagram Narayan. Chakshu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Virjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaskate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarusha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, everything has its context. It's interesting when you read the Vedic literature, Vaishnava literature, there are so many different layers of meaning. So there is a philosophy that is being espoused, and that is very important, very significant. There is also the leelas which are taking place, that is also very instructive, how the devotees conduct themselves. We have this sadhachar, and in the stage of practice, as devotees, we practice the sadhachar. That sadhachar is given in literature such as Caitanya-Caritāmṛta, but what we practice is what is done spontaneously by the pure devotees. So for them it's not practice, for them it's just natural. So their natural responses, their natural ways of thinking about situations, their natural ways of feeling about situations, and their natural activities all are the same things that we should practice. They do it naturally driven by prema. That prema brings about a certain natural way of seeing the world, a certain vision. Premanjana Jirta Bhakti Vilochanena. It is not just a vision that gives some sight of the Lord, but it goes far deeper than that. It is a vision that helps them understand intuitively and naturally the behaviors, the responses, the ways of thinking that will naturally be fully satisfying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this, in the run-up to these verses, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya showed great determination. There are 2 types of devotees. One type of devotee is reactive, the other type of devotee is proactive. What we see here The Lord he's in Jagannath Puri, and he's going to leave. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he's just really determined and asking him again and again. So it begins, let's see. It begins 186. One day Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with folded hands, and he said he submitted a request. And what is his request? Please accept my invitation for lunch for 1 month. And then the Lord will refuse, and then they'll go back and forth. And the Lord first of all says, I'll stay for 1 day. That's verse number 190. Right? The Lord said, I shall accept lunch at your place for 1 day only. Right? For people who are good at negotiating, they know how to do this. Right? There's a science of negotiation. Whatever you want, you always ask for more. And then you can concede some things, like, right, you don't give me 30 days, okay, I'll take 15, you know, like that. And so he gets into the point that the Lord agrees, okay, 5 days. But interestingly enough, in one sense, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, his desire for 1 month is still fulfilled because there are other sannyasis traveling with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they will fill up the rest of the calendar, right? So he still gets to do what he wants to do. So the first point here in the flow of this particular lila is perseverance. Krishna isn't easy to attain, but we have an opportunity. The opportunity is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Actually, the opportunity is the Radharani, who is part of that combined form. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. The hope is actually the motherly mood. The hope is that motherly kindness and mercy that every single individual needs. We know that as above, so below. This motherliness that we experience in the material world is a reflection of the divine motherly mood. Baba Yashoda, even we refer to Radharani. There's a class Prabhupada gave in Berry Place. I think it was 1976. He refers to Radharani, Jaganmata. It's on Radhastami. Jaganmata, and he says that what she will do when you try to offer something to Radharani, she goes before Krishna and says, Krishna, this is your devotee. Please accept them. They are better than I. So this very, very, very sweet mood. So this first lesson is perseverance. Whatever you want spiritually, we should always understand that we are swimming upstream. We should expect that therefore, whatever we are trying to achieve spiritually, it will take tremendous tenacity. It's not a one and done. And when you see a devotee who seems to be moving very easily, you should understand they've actually worked very hard previously. See? So this is also why the vision of the Shastra is so important. There's something called attribution error. Attribution error means that you can see something and you can come to the wrong conclusion about it. You see someone and you think, oh, they seem to have a spiritual life, it seems to be going very, very easily. It means that they had all the same tests that you're having in the previous life and they passed them. Right? And because they passed the test in the previous life, in this life they move through certain things very, very easily. Right? But the work was done previously. In fact, there's an even deeper lesson here. The strength of your ability to overcome the challenges in your devotional life, in our devotional life, has a direct relationship of all the practice you do behind the scenes. Think about that. Right? Every single devotee will have their own battle of Kurukshetra. Right? We have our own different challenges. But the strength of the victory when those challenges come upon us is directly related to what you do every single day. The strength of your practice determines the strength of one's performance. And every moment is our practice. How you greet the devotees is a practice. In this series of verses, which begins 197, the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya makes a very interesting point. If all the sannyasis came together, it would not be possible for me to pay them proper respects. Therefore, I would be an offender. Right? If I can't deal with them properly, it'll make an offense. That's what he's actually saying. Our exchanges with the devotees is a practice. Every devotee carries this Kripa Shakti. So in every exchange, it is an opportunity to please that devotee, to please Krishna by serving that devotee. A kind word can be service. Right? Some showing of concern can be service. And when that devotee is pleased, something is released by the Lord. And that is the Lord's mercy upon us. So it is just like, you see some young person and they are struggling to get home. They've lost their money, they've lost their wallet, they need to catch a bus home. And you give them some money to help them to actually get back home. But that young man or that young lady, she's or he is the daughter of a very rich person. They get home, they immediately tell their parents, this person helped me. Your money in another context would have very little value to this family. But when their dependent was in need and you did something for them, immediately you became dear to the parents. Immediately. So in the similar vein, the devotees are those who are, I was going to say dependent, it's not quite true. Everyone's dependent on Krishna. There are some people who recognize their dependence and some people who don't recognize their dependence, but everyone's dependent. And that's not a philosophical idea. It is simply a description of the reality. So this month of Kartik is also a great opportunity. Sometimes this month of Kartik is called Urja, which is a name of Radharani. Urja means energy. So there is a special energy that we try to receive, a special grace that we try to tap into during this particular month of Kartik. And that is the mercy of Srimati Radharani. So devotees will do special vows, all kinds of different things, extra rounds, and we'll sing this beautiful Damodarastakam prayer. If you meditate on this prayer, these prayers have such meaning. What is it? Krishna's hair, was it soft curly locks of hair tinged with red, right? Tinged with red. It's a beautiful description. His lips are reddish like the bimba fruit. His sharp-shaped earrings swinging to and fro. Right? If you listen to these translations, it's a beautiful vision, a beautiful darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? And it's just, it helps us to really meditate. This is the Lord. There are different stages of chanting, actually. At one stage of chanting is called, because there's different stages or different realization of sound. The stage of chanting where one is able to have such a remembrance of the Lord's form is called Pasyanti Vak. Pasyanti means to see, right? Pasyanti Vak. So there's Vaikari Vak, which is gross sound. Then you have Madhyama Vak. Madhyama Vak is sound at the level of the mind. Pasyanti Vak is sound at the level of the intelligence. Intelligence has a connotation with being able to see, visualization. So at the level of Pasyanti Vak, at every level of sound there's a particular smarana that comes naturally. So the Vedic or Vaishnava literature, it goes to great length to give symptoms of different stages so that one can understand where they are. So at the level of Pasyanti Vak, the smaranam that comes is Rupa Guna Lila. Right? So Rupa, the form of the Lord, that is naturally remembered. And Guna, the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For a devotee at that stage of chanting, they naturally, spontaneously remember those points. At the Vaikari Vak, which is the first stage, there's Maya Smarana. We remember Maya. Right? It's nothing particularly great about that. But then at the stage of Madhyama Vak, which is the stage of Nishtha, then there's Nam Smarana. One spontaneously remembers the holy name, which is very interesting because it also relates to the writings of the acharyas about the different stages from the Shikshashtakam. The third verse, Trinada Pisa Nichana, Tara Pisa Hisnuna, Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari. This last part, Kirtaniya Sadahari. One can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Right? So there's a natural correlation. That's the stage of Madhyama Varga. That's the stage of Nishtha. So one can chant the name of the Lord constantly, and we can understand because they're also remembering the name of the Lord constantly. Nam Smara. So it all fits together. Anyway, so this point, there's the determination of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He's negotiated with Krishna with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have this arrangement, and he's still going to be able to look after the sannyasis throughout the entire month. And then what else is then there's a few other interesting things which are mentioned. So, in verse 200, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's wife is known as Satira Mata, the mother of Sati. She was a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and she was affectionate like a mother. This affection of the mother is very significant. There's a whole thing on what's called Vedic psychology. Traditionally, the father helps the children to understand their swabhav, right? Their nature. Because what he's meant to do is recognize their natural tendencies and then express them, call those out to the young person. Oh, you tend to be really good at this, or I noticed that you painted really, really well, or I love the way that you express that intellectual thought. The father's meant to reflect back to the child what their talents are, and in that way the child learns what their particular skills or gifts are. The mother has a particular role. She's meant to validate the child's feelings, actually, traditionally. Right? So, the child's crying, oh, it seems like you're really hurt. Are you okay? I can see you hurt your foot, or you look like I can tell that you're really angry at this particular point. And by recognizing the child's emotions, the child also becomes emotionally aware. Right? So today I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling very jubilant, or I'm feeling very upset. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Shri Shri Gaunitai Yashoda Damodar Ki Jai. And so when the child gets that validation from the mother, the lesson that they learn is, A, they become aware of their emotions. Right? They can recognize what they're feeling. And in addition to that, what does the mother do traditionally? She soothes the child's emotions. So she labels them, okay, you're feeling anger. She validates them, I can understand what you're feeling. So the child learns to recognize their emotion. They learn to pay attention to their emotions. But there's also something else. She soothes the child. And that child, because mother soothed my emotions, the child becomes the adult who's able to self-soothe. They're able to manage and regulate their own emotions. So there's deep purport to this. Unfortunately, in the modern society, everything's kind of gone a bit crazy. Therefore, what people tend to do instead, and this is a danger that can happen to devotees as well. Devotees can, rather than recognizing emotions, which is a mode of goodness, because a mode of goodness means awareness. I recognize that, I work with it, I let it go. Just like a child. You don't see children holding a grudge, young children. If the child's hungry, they're going to cry. They're going to keep crying until you make them something to eat, okay? But once they've had a meal, it's all gone. They're not you don't see, there's no journaling. Mum was an hour late, with the meal. It's like next time, it's nothing like that. They don't keep a score. They express the emotion fully and they fully let it go. And you'll see that same tendency with pure devotees. Prabhupada will sometimes get very angry. Very angry. And he would really kind of lay things down. And then the next minute he'd be completely calm, and the devotees were completely shocked. I don't understand, Prabhupada, you seemed really upset. But he just let it go. But then Prabhupada explained, he said, a devotee is like the ocean. He said, on the surface there are waves, but deep down there's complete calm. So the feeling comes up and it's completely let go of. Right? It's not repressed, which is the mode of ignorance, by the way. It's not just lashed out, which is the mode of passion. But it's recognized. And then it's expressed fully but appropriately according to time, place, and circumstance, and then it's completely let go of. No grudges, no holding on to something, let go. I was upset, I let it go. That's the proper attunement, that's the proper channeling of feeling. And it's very easy when one has received that motherly attention and that mood in their childhood. If not, we can also, through our own understanding, develop that. Also through good examples, we can develop that as adults. So, this next verse, 201. So you hear about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, his wife. She began cooking, but there's more. It says she began cooking with great pleasure. This is very significant. In Ayurveda, you see the reason why there's an emphasis on who you accept food from, let's say, prashadam, should be prashadam, but there's a thing about who you accept it from, because actually food has an effect upon both the physical body and the subtle body. When you accept food that has been cooked by someone, the gross physical element becomes part of the gross physical body. It's transformed into your physical body. But the subtle element becomes part of your subtle body. In fact, according to Ayurveda, whatever you ingest, you not only take in the gross physical element, but you also take in the subtle qualities. It's a great science. And it's very, very logical, by the way. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhumya Ponalavaya Kamana Buddhi Evacha Ahankrityami Bina Prakriti Ishtada. He starts by talking about these 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. So in Ayurveda, there are these 3 doshas, and each dosha is made up of some of these elements. So if you have vata, vata is air and ether. So for example, popcorn. So I had popcorn recently. So for example, popcorn, it's actually vatic because it's dry, right? And light and fluffy. It's air and ether. So I remember just a few days ago I was having some popcorn and I could feel my body becoming more dry. I could feel that because by taking the popcorn, you're taking in those elements, those qualities of the popcorn. So in a similar way, if you take something very hot, spicy, right? Some people like their spices. So in ISKCON, I know what it's like. When you take in very spicy food, that heat element, you're taking that quality into your body. So people who take too much spice, they can become more easily irritable. So whatever we ingest, part of it becomes the gross physical body, part of it becomes the subtle body. So there's an import here. She began cooking with great pleasure. The mood in which something is done is also ingested by the person who receives it. That is the inference. The Vedic literature, the Vaishnava literatures, they're full of what's called the implied meaning. You have the direct meaning, abhidavriti, that's the name of it, the direct meaning, but there's also the indirect meaning. So there are so many things which are implied, right? So Shabda, the statements of the Shastra, Anuman, the inference, the Vedic, the logic, the implied meaning. Just like you have in Bhagavatam, Narada Muni is telling this allegory, right? The story of King Paranjana. And this is termed parokshavad, right? Indirect communication. Krishna likes that, by the way. When people are very sophisticated, they don't always say things directly, right? When they're very sophisticated, very witty, they kind of just imply it, say things indirectly, and you kind of get the hint, you know? They'll say, oh, that's a nice dress. And you think, right, I need to change my dress. Whatever it is. You know, the tone of voice, whatever is kind of, oh, I caught the hint. My dad told me once, he said, a word to the wise is enough. That's what he told me. I remember that. He only said it once to me. Probably wasn't very wise. But that's the point. So something is implied. So you can catch the hint of it. There's it's in the 2nd canto. So there's a verse, Atrasaga Visagascha Stanam Poshanam Utaya Manvanta Ishanukata Nirodha Mukti Ashraya. It talks about the 10 themes of the Bhagavatam. And just near that verse, it's explained that these are explained, that actually the theme is, the highest theme is actually Krishna, Samambonam. But it's explained indirectly through the other 9. So what's explained in the Bhagavatam is about Krishna. But even these other topics, Saga, right, primary creation, Visaga, secondary creation, Saga Visagascha, Stanam, the structural order of the universe, all these other topics, they're really getting to the same thing. They're all actually an explanation of Krishna. They're all talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he's spoken about directly and he's spoken about indirectly. So because the wife of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya began cooking with great pleasure, that mood will be there in the prasadam. Right? She's a great devotee of the Lord. It's explained in these verses. That means her devotion will be present in the prasadam that she cooks. The devotees once, I remember hearing this from Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I think it was some burfi that Prabhupada made, and he gave it to him. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj ate the burfi, and he said that the flavor exploded in his mouth. And he said that to Prabhupada, this is incredible. And Prabhupada said to him, he said, Mother Yashoda gave me the recipe. Mother Yashoda gave me the recipe. Right? It's very, very beautiful, loving exchange. So, this next verse, 202. So it's saying that at the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, there was always a full stock of food. This is also very significant. This is symbolic of the fact that where there is devotion, real devotion, there's abundance. Again, the trouble with our modern society, this is very practical. The modern society has divorced the subtle and the spiritual from the gross. There's this foolish idea that if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. And that's why there's tremendous scarcity and lacking, because there's not an understanding that the root cause of everything is actually spiritual. In fact, the root cause of everything is actually a person. It's not even just spiritual, it's an actual person. Aham savasya prabhavo mata savam pravatate iti matva bhajante mam Bhuta Bhavana Dāsa. Krishna himself makes that point in the Bhagavad Gita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. He says, everything emanates from me. The moment you have a society that fails to understand that, you will always have trouble. And it's even worse, because not only will there be trouble, but there'll be a lack of vision as to understanding the root cause of the issues. Right now, there's a whole thing going on in the world socially about this lack of, people are struggling financially, materially, lack of resources. It comes actually down to the same issue, a lack of God consciousness. Right? A lack of watering the root, of understanding that what is actually causing everything to be produced in abundance isn't because there's some billionaire who's very good at manipulating things. It's actually God. Right? It's actually one thing. It is the supreme personality of Godhead. There is a personality of Godhead, and there are Krishna's laws. So you say that, okay, what about this person? They don't believe in God, but they're pious. Pious means that they follow God's laws. Right? And then you have the devotee who follows God's laws for Krishna's pleasure. But either way, the only way that things actually work, and when I say work, I don't mean work temporarily. I mean work consistently. Jai Shri Shri Radha. The only way that things work consistently is that Krishna has to be involved. Otherwise, it's not possible. The only things that work, and that is the education that needs to be delivered to the world. It is what causes real abundance, and abundance is of two types. Abundance is both external in terms of natural wealth. Chanakya says that, by the way. He says real wealth is natural wealth. Right? Because that's something that you can sustain yourself with. So real wealth is natural wealth. So there's abundance externally and there's abundance internally. That you actually feel satisfied within yourself and within your life. And the two things are connected. When you have a society that feels very empty inside, they will constantly be trying to chase more and more things externally, because the greed is actually due to a certain lack. Greed comes from a feeling of lacking, actually. Right? When people are very greedy, what they're trying to do is they're trying to solve an internal problem with an external solution. If I just had more of this and more of that, I would be satisfied. It never works. Right? Because it's symptomatic of the nature of passion. Just like you have a rash. You think it's causing me some agitation, so I'm going to scratch it. Great. But when you scratch it, you actually cause more agitation. You inflame the actual issue that you were trying to solve in the first place. It works. The inflammation has to be resolved by the cooling experience. The cooling experience. Krishna, he appears in the Chandra Vamsa. Chandra means moon. So he is inherently cooling and satisfying. And his devotees, they carry that same potency that he carries. So we know that the cooking of the wife of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya would carry this devotion. And therefore, that devotion, by those who would take that food in, that would become part of their consciousness. This is why when we offer food, when we're trying to prepare something to offer to the Lord, your meditation is a really important part of it. And that is why as we become more sensitive, you will sometimes go into environments, and sometimes you may even take something and you can understand something about the meditation of the cook by what you've ingested. When you find that you had a certain mood before the meal and you had a different mood after the meal, you'll be able to understand that something of the person's meditation who was cooking that particular meal has come into your subtle body, which is why you're starting to think and feel a certain way. Nothing is neutral. Let's move on. So, it says, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, this is text 203, personally began to help Satira Mata, that's his wife, cook. She was very experienced and she knew how to cook nicely, so he began to help. The whole idea of devotion, going back to this idea of reactive devotees, proactive devotees, is to get yourself involved. Right? This Krishna consciousness, yes, there is purification by the practice, but we have to want to get the goal. You have to want Krishna. It's not, if you have a lukewarm practice in Krishna consciousness, Krishna will respond to you in this kind. You know, they come and see me every now and then, whenever they feel like it, whenever it's convenient for them. Okay, that's how we reciprocate. And if you want Krishna to really be present in your life deeply, especially getting the benefit and the blessing of this month of Kartik, you should go all out. There's a real secret to being proactive in this Krishna consciousness. We don't know what challenges we're going to face in the future. You know, when you see a world-class gymnast, they're performing, as we said earlier, what you're seeing is the result of all the practice they did behind the scenes. Not just the hours that they put in. Hours are important, but it was the intensity of the practice. It was the intensity of the practice, along with the number of hours of practice, those coming together with how much they gave themselves wholeheartedly to that practice. That is why they were able, at this particular point, to show up in a particular way. So we should consider that ultimately, what is the ultimate performance? The ultimate performance for every single devotee is death. What we are doing every day in our practice is to prepare us ante kale chamameva smaran mutva kalevram ya prati samadbhavam yati nashjasya samshayaha. Ante kale. We're preparing ourselves for the time of death. So that at the time of death, you can walk back home, back to the spiritual world. So it's our practice. But practice also is meant to have a mood. Sometimes, to be honest, devotees, sometimes they don't like going to class or reading Prabhupada, but it's like, oh my God, Prabhupada's going to have me out again. It's going to tell me, it's going to remind me of all the things I'm not doing, right? And even if I'm doing all the things, it's going to remind me about the mood in which I'm meant to be doing the things as well. Let's shortcut this. Do it joyfully. Sushukam kartum avyayam. This is a love affair. This Krishna consciousness is meant to be a relationship. To do it joyfully. To run to where there is actual shelter. We have accepted so many false shelters over so many lifetimes. And we've become disappointed through those false shelters. We've been given an opportunity in this lifetime to understand the greatest shelter, the infallible shelter. Actually, we're trying to take shelter of Radharani. Actually. Right? By engaging in this Krishna consciousness process in this beautiful month of Kartik, which is non-different to Radharani herself. We understand no one approaches Krishna unless she is pleased. She keeps all the nonsense away from Krishna. Motherly, well, in relation to Krishna is different, but she's motherly towards us if we approach her in the proper mood. But she keeps all the nonsense away from Krishna, but she's also very soft-hearted. So we need the recommendation of Srimati Radharani, right? Urjeshwari, right? She is Adi Shakti, energy, right? The original energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so as we engage in the pastimes, as we recite the Damodarastakam, as we offer the lamp to Yashoda Damodar, we are trying to get Radharani's mercy so that she will recommend us to her Krishna. Krishna belongs to one person. He belongs to Srimati Radharani. And as we have that mood, we can also recognize that we're also always dependent on the devotee's grace in order to make progress. I'll just mention one last thing. So this point about offering, this last verse, 204, it mentions the Shalagram Shila, and it talks about how every Brahmana engages in this worship, is compulsory. So the Lord appears in many, many different forms. Prabhupada will sometimes talk about Shalagram worship. He says you can offer water, tulsi leaf, mantra, and that the Shalagram Shila is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Shalagram Shila is a deity of the Lord, and it can be worshipped. There are many famous devotees. Ayendra was known to have many, many different Shalagrams who we would worship regularly. But the principle we can see here is that the Lord is very, very kind. If you want to have enthusiasm despite our flaws, if you want to have enthusiasm to keep going on in your spiritual journey, you can meditate on Krishna's and Radharani's kindness. Right? You can meditate on that, how kind they are. And what that will do is it will inspire determination. Because they're so kind, I will never ever stop trying to get their favor and their mercy. We have rules, we have regulations, absolutely. But behind that, right, what is it that's said in Nectar of Instruction? You don't follow rules and regulations for the sake of following rules and regulations. Right? We want to understand there's an actual purpose behind it. We're trying to regain our lost relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and with the devotees, not just the devotees in this world, but with the devotees in the spiritual world, the eternal associates of the Lord. And through this powerful process of bhakti yoga, we will once again be reunited. And we will, as these prayers really wonderfully say, we want that remembrance to be always, those childhood pastimes to be always enacted within our hearts, within our minds. Okay. Time went a lot faster than I expected, but it's 9 o'clock. So maybe we'll stop here. And do we have time for questions? Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, well, since no one's saying no, I saw a hand at the back first. So, yes. I don't know if you have a microphone. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a very nice class. I just wanted to ask you, what is the difference between repressing, which you said is in the mode of ignorance, and tolerance, which is recommend in various places?
Great point. So repression, there's a very good class that was given here actually. It's a great class. It was given by His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj. He actually gave it upstairs. It was to the brahmacharis here. And it's online. And I think it's called Suppression versus Mind Control. So he talks about this point in this class. So when you're suppressing something, see that it has the qualities of ignorance. Ignorance means you're denying what you're actually feeling. You see, tolerance, it actually implies goodness. Because tolerance means I recognize that I am upset. I don't deny that I'm upset. But that doesn't mean I can just speak to people however I want. I'm upset, I recognize it, but now I'm going to have to work with that emotion. Why am I upset? Is that actually a good reason for me being upset? Or is it that I'm just really, really offended about something that I shouldn't be offended by anyway? So I can look at it. In goodness, so if you know, so you can look at anything and you can consider what's the mode of ignorance response, what's the mode of passion response, what's the mode of goodness response. Tolerance can be in goodness, but you're fully aware, you're looking at it honestly, and you're going to respond still according to Guru Sadhu Shastra. You see? Ignorance means I'm going to pretend that I'm not upset even though I am upset. Right? So I'm going to lie not just to the external situation, I'm lying to myself. Oh, I'm not really upset. I don't really care. No, you do. You do. It's actually very humbling to see what goes through our minds. And it's good. To see the nonsense that goes on in the mind is good, because it helps us to have some real humility. Oh, I'm offended, but I shouldn't be offended. Right? If I was more advanced, I wouldn't be upset about this behavior. I would be able to let it go. I'd be able to recognize, yes, maybe they've had a bad day, right? Often the bad behavior of another person is just due to some bad experiences they had in their own upbringing, right? But the fact that I'm holding on to it, I'm so offended, yeah, that's my lack of advancement. So I recognize it, and then that humbles me. But I'm not pretending that that's not going on. Yeah? So the key difference between repression and tolerance is awareness, actually. And the willingness to work with whatever I feel to then deal with it in a way that's in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So, in the Nectar of Instruction, when it talks about the 6 loving exchanges, one of the ways that I may deal with feeling upset is I'm going to reveal my mind to a close associate, and they're going to help me to work through it, to let it go. Okay, do you think that maybe that the person was having a bad day, or I hear I can understand why you're upset, and just because someone understands, I'm able to let it go and move on. But what happens when you repress something, we know from the Bhagavad Gita, ignorance leads to destruction. So what happens when someone keeps repressing something in the name of Krishna consciousness, usually they end up becoming explosive, right? They repress for so long, then they suddenly explode, and everyone's like, well, how did that happen? Yeah, it's because they were holding it, they were repressing it for all this time, and they couldn't repress it anymore, and it came out the wrong way. They can end up being explosive, they can end up just making offenses, because they didn't address it properly. They can end up leaving. Oh, these devotees, they're all like this, they're all like that. I've had enough, I can't take it anymore. But actually, you should have just told someone. There's many nuances to the scripture. Even how you deal with your emotions is depending on your level of advancement. More advanced, one can just let something go, right? Less advanced, they may need to process it, speak through it. Okay, but where you are, that's how you should deal with it. But you always try to take it in line with the philosophy and in line with the etiquette. Then you won't get sick. In the class on this topic, one interesting thing that Bhaktivedanta Maharaj mentioned is that an Ayurvedic doctor had told him that there are certain illnesses of the mind that come, and they are due to people repressing anger. Yeah. There was a seminar I heard by Prahladananda Maharaj. It's on ISKCON Desiratory. It's called Hope This Meets You in Good Health. And he's talking about, because he studied Ayurveda, so he's talking about these things from a Krishna conscious perspective. And he says that there are some issues, there are some illnesses, that what happens in the modern world, unfortunately, is certain treatments, they just suppress the symptoms of the illness. And because which is again mode of ignorance, right? You're just pushing it down. Let's just hide it. Let's just push it down somewhere so it doesn't exist. And then what the result, he explained in that seminar, the result of suppressing certain illnesses, well, what do you think happens if you suppress a certain illness after a while? It comes back even in worse form. He actually said that in the seminar. So he said that there are certain illnesses that people unfortunately just suppress, and then later on they get something much worse. So that's not goodness. So that's a long way of answering your question. I hope I answered your question. Tolerance is symptomatic of goodness. I recognize what I'm feeling, and then I actually work through it so that I can let it go. We cannot afford at the time of death to hold on to any grudges with anyone. Right? There'll be some devotees, unfortunately, at the time of death, they'll have the ability to go back to Godhead, but then they'll remember, I've still got a grudge against this person did this to me, this person said that to me, this person didn't do this for me. And if you remember that person at the time of death, you're going to have to come back again. Right? So let's try to make this the end. And that means everyday forgiveness, everyday compassion. I gave class yesterday at ISKCON London, and I was sharing something that I heard from my spiritual master, so it's Bhakti Maharaj. He said, everything in spiritual life becomes easy when there's sufficient humility and compassion. Everything in spiritual life becomes easy when there's sufficient humility and compassion. But we have to work for that. Because we're not brought up in a society which just inspires everyone to be humble and compassionate. Again, the proactive devotee recognizes, I take offense easily. Okay, what does that mean? I've got to work on the compassion. If I work on compassion, and when someone does something you don't like, this is how you know you've got deep compassion. You spontaneously have some concern. Is everything okay? This person seems to be really quite rude or harsh. Maybe something's going wrong in their own life. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand to think. I was going to think. Should I tell you to raise your hand if you spontaneously think like that? I don't think many hands are going to go up personally, right? We're not going to ask you that. But that's what we're meant to do. That's why we're meant to try to develop these things before the difficulties come about. Proactive devotion is much less stressful, it's much sweeter, and it's much easier. So, I don't get into a whole other lecture, but I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Was there any other question? Who's got the microphone? Oh.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much. I had a question around, you spoke about how a lot of the problems we have in the world are due to a godless civilization.
All the problems.
So on that, it seems like unlikely, thank you. It seems unlikely that civilization will become more godful because of just the nature of the material world. Recently there was this, some like serious political stuff happening in America, and at this time there was like some quotes by Srila Prabhupada circulating around how he says, just try and get out of this material world, don't try to change it, because this is just the nature of the material world.
Yes.
And then the second last thing on this is that Lord Chaitanya said that my holy name will be heard in every town and village,
Yes.
not necessarily that everyone will become a devotee, and
Sure.
not necessarily that all of these problems will be solved.
Yes.
So I was just wondering your thoughts on.
It's a great question. So, the first thing is not everyone will be, Prabhupada says that actually. He says not everyone will become a devotee. But he also says you don't have to have everyone become a devotee. If there's this idea of critical mass. If a significant number of people on the planet become devotees, it will change everything. I was mentioning yesterday that Prabhupada was in America. He was in one state, I can't remember which state, but at that time it was the slaughterhouse capital of the world, of America. It was the slaughterhouse capital of the States. And the weather was bitterly cold, and Prabhupada told the devotees, if you can just get them to close down these slaughterhouses, he said immediately the weather will change. So that's one thing. Second, the nature of the material world is, material by definition, but we're in the golden period within that. And so actually the responsibility to make the world Krishna conscious, it lies with everyone in this room. That's our job. Right? Krishna will do it, but he'll do it through the devotees. And devotion, purity means what? It means you get out the way to allow him to do what he's going to do anyway. If everyone can do their part, and most importantly, cooperate, not playing politics, not doing ridiculous nonsense stuff behind people's back. If devotees can actually cooperate properly, you'll see the movement will spread incredibly well. It requires strategy and it requires purity. So books are the basis, purity is the force, preaching is the essence, and there's a fourth one. Utility is the principle, right? So if you follow these maxims by Prabhupada, it can easily happen. It can easily happen. We have to accept Krishna consciousness within our own hearts, and we have to be more and more expert in making it available for others. But it will happen. This 10,000-year golden period is ordained like that. So it will happen. But whether we get the benefit for that or the credit for being used, that's up to us. So everyone has a part to play, and as long as we do that properly, we'll be fine. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Okay, maybe final question, and I know people will want to take breakfast.
Thank you for making the whole time so immersive and enlightening.
I think it was immersive for you, but I wasn't sure about everyone else. But thank you for the kind words.
When I do the same practice of reading Gita at home, I sometimes feel I'm not as immersed as I was now, because the mind is always in a rush to look at the next task and complete that. Okay, I finish this and then. So how can I enjoy the spiritual practices by being more calm and not in a rush?
Yeah, I was listening to something about this topic. I can't remember who I was listening to. It was a class. And a really wonderful point was made, is that when we do spiritual practices, you should think that there's nothing else that needs to be done at this time. When we chant, for example, the mood should be, when I'm chanting, I don't have anything else to do. It requires, because some people, the mind's a little bit more restless. So if you know you've got other tasks, make sure that that's scheduled. But we have to make deliberate time for our practices. And that has to be protected time. I remember His Holiness the Mount Krishna when we used to go and serve him. Before a certain time, you can't see him. Before a certain time in the morning, because he had such great sadhana. That time, he was doing his dissertation on Prabhupada at Cambridge. At that time, you can't access him. He's doing the things that he needs to do. It's called protected time. The trouble is, we're not fully present. So when we're doing one thing, our mind is thinking, I've got to get something else done. So what we have to do is remind ourselves, actually, we don't have to get anything else done. There's another, however many hours in the day. But it comes with practice, and it comes with association. Right? So what we have to do is understand, this is now my practice. My practice isn't just chanting. My practice is I chant with an understanding that when I'm chanting, I've got nothing else to be done. Doesn't matter, put the phone away, because the phones are terrible, right? Put the phone away. I have nothing else to do. Between this time and this time, when I do my spiritual practice, there's nothing else that I need to get done. Everything else can wait. And everything else should be set up so that your mind doesn't keep coming back and say, yeah, you say it can wait, but actually this needs to be done. And try to, when you arrange things with other people, only arrange times after your practice. So the Vedic kings, they would arrange their schedule according to the modes. The morning was for sadhana and for strategy, right? Planning the day. Sadhana first. Afternoon was for execution, because afternoon is a mode of passion. Because if you want to execute, the mode of passion is useful for execution and getting things done. The evening, the mode of ignorance, the evening was for socializing, because you're relaxing. That's your relaxation time, right? Because ignorance is good for relaxation, it's good for sleep. So if you actually structure your day like that, and remember, when I'm reading, there's nothing else to do. If I'm reading, all I need to do is read. Everything else can wait later on. I've got time for everything else. I've scheduled everything else in the day. So when I'm reading, I'm only reading. I'm not doing anything else. When I'm chanting, I'm only chanting. I'm not doing anything else. If you practice that, it will change. Okay, so we'll have to stop there. Thank you for your tolerance. Shri Caitanya-Caritāmṛta ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Janitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.